Connor Long in for Jake Asman. Friday edition of the Jake Asman Show. We have our very special guest. I told you guys this show was going to be legendary, and it's not a legendary show without ESPN senior NFL reporter Jeremy Fowler, who graces us with his presence. Jeremy, appreciate you fitting us into your busy schedule. And how you doing? I mean, OTA training camp's right around the corner. It's going to be a full rush ahead shortly.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we got OTAs and a little mini camp action over the next few weeks, and then got a break in the calendar and then training camp. So it's all going to happen very fast. But yeah, appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, Jeremy. Appreciate you. You've always been great to me. So appreciate you fitting us into your schedule and sparing some time for us. I guess where I'm going to start is the Jets offseason has been really interesting. They've gone the route of targeting young guys with upside who they think have a high ceiling, maybe don't have high floors, but can come in. And if they hit their ceiling, they can be significant impact players for this team. There's still some names out there on the free agent market. Amari Cooper remains unsigned. Keenan Allen out there. We know wide receiver 2 still a position in need for the Jets. Zadarius Smith, even another name I'll throw in there, has the connection to Aaron Glenn. Edge, I think, is a position in need. You know, kind of talking with people around the league. Do you think there's a chance that the Jets do add another free agent ahead of the season, or you think they're all set with the crew they're riding with?
So I'm looking at just kind of their offseason roster, in particular the draft. You know, I mean, they drafted Arian Smith from Georgia, whom they like. They feel like they can get him out in open space and sweeps and things like that. This is the time of year where you want to see what your young players can do. Obviously, you got Mason Taylor, a tight end. So you got the rookies in for minicamp and then OTAs, then eventually minicamp. You want to see what they can handle, where they can fill, let's say, a wide receiver 3 role or wide receiver 2, where guys fit. And after that, then if you need free agency help this summer or closer to training camp, you can make a call to Amari Cooper. I could see Cooper as a fit, certainly. You know, Keenan Allen, I still believe, wants to be on the West Coast. I think where he signs will be somewhere out west. Not sure where yet, but, you know, Amari Cooper certainly could fill that wide receiver 2 role next to Garrett Wilson. And it really depends on the money, as we know with these things. So a lot of these established veterans, you know, they've made a lot of money in their career, so they don't want to sign for $2 million, let's say. You know, they want to get something at least reasonable for their skill set, and teams don't want to give that up right now unless they're desperate. So, you know, if the Jets find out by the end of mid-June that they have an injury or they're not as good as they'd like to be at a certain spot, they can go address it then.
Absolutely. Justin Fields has kind of emerged as the face of the franchise after the team decided to ink him to a 2-year contract this offseason. How do you think teams around the league truly view Justin Fields and Aaron Glenn? Because everything, you know, we think Fields has a high upside. We've said that for multiple years now. I mean, the guy's 26 years old. I don't think ever really gotten a fair shake, given the fact that he's, you know, gone through all these different 5 offensive coordinators, I think it is, throughout his NFL career. He's never had a strong offensive line in front of him. Now it's like kind of you have to do something with the Jets. I think this is his last crack to be a starter at the NFL level. How do other NFL teams kind of view the Jets with Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields? What is their stance kind of on this team?
Well, I think at least with Justin Fields, you know, the perception around the league is that the Jets will have a clear identity. They have a quarterback who is a true dual threat, which, as we know, there are only about 6 or 7 or maybe even 4 or 5 quarterbacks that you can say, okay, that's a scheme transcendent quarterback. You can put your team on his back and you're going to win and have a chance at a Super Bowl. There just aren't very many of those. So with Fields, you know, he gives you more in the running game. Teams like the Jets are just going to need to rely more on the running game than, say, you know, the Bengals if you have a Joe Burrow. And so Fields gives you that automatically. He's got the arm strength. You know, it depends on who you ask, really, as far as what they think he'll do with the Jets, because some have sort of pigeonholed him as an average NFL starter who can make some things happen. You can certainly win games with, but maybe it's not going to be a pure pocket passer where you're throwing 40 times a game, right? But that said, there are some others around the league who believe or subscribe to what you said, which maybe he wasn't given a fair shake. Chicago is always a tricky situation for quarterbacks. We know that. Pittsburgh, he was 4-2 as a starter, did pretty well. They weren't prolific in the passing game, but he was good and did what they asked. That's why I think he had a market. You know, if you have at least 2 teams willing to pay you, then that means you've done something right in free agency, that is. So in this case, Fields had the Jets and he had the Steelers. So he was doing something right. And, you know, I think the Jets look at this as, you know, we can take our shot in 26 or maybe even 27 on a quarterback in the draft. But now we need somebody who can help us win games right now who's not Aaron Rodgers. And so I think that was, Fields fit that bill really well.
Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, 2022 first-round picks who've come in and not only established themselves as key parts of these Jet teams, but really have kind of made their mark on the NFL overall. Sauce Gardner, in my opinion, undisputable top 5 cornerback in the NFL, and I think Garrett Wilson could even be argued to be a top 10 guy at the wide receiver position. Jeremy, the Jets picked up their 5th-year options for the 2026 season. Yeah. When do you think an extension gets banged out for these guys? Is it this offseason? Do you see something happening potentially before the start of the year? Or do you think the Jets ultimately wait till next offseason to make these guys Jets for long term?
I do believe there's a chance they get something done. Most front offices now are going to at least try to be proactive if you have a marquee guy, which I think in Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, they certainly do, because it's only going to cost you more a year from now. That seems to be the trend. Even a couple years ago, you would only pay quarterbacks or maybe a pass rusher who was 3 years into a first-round rookie deal, which means they still had 2 years of contractual control with the 5th-year option. I do think that's slightly changing now, so you could see a deal. And in fact, I'll say this here. From what I've heard, they've at least had some initial talks and made some sort of contract offer for those 2 players. I don't know all the details, but that's asking around. That is my expectation, that they've at least gotten that far. Now, where that leads, or if that leads to anything, I don't know. But I do think the Jets are going to follow through on their plans to at least try.
What are your thoughts overall on how the Jets kind of handled the 2025 NFL draft? There was a lot of discussion whether the Jets were going to elect to use the number 7 overall pick in a weapon that was presumably going to be Tyler Warren. The Jets ultimately didn't elect to go that route. They decided to select Armand Membu with the number 7 pick, solidifies the offensive line for this team. And I personally wanted Tyler Warren. I wanted another pass catching option for Justin Fields, but you can never complain about, kind of solidifying the offensive line. I know you wrote an article not too long ago that, according to many NFL scouts, that they think he might be the next Jason Peters. And Jeremy, I think if you select Jason Peters with the number 7 overall pick, that's a win any day of the week. What's the perception around the league on how the Jets handled the 2025 draft?
Yeah, I think as far as upside, Membo had the most at the offensive tackle position. And there were really 3 tackles that were going to go high. And it was funny around the draft time. I mean, I think a lot of teams I was speaking to thought that they would maybe go Kelvin Banks out of Texas. There was a lot of buzz about Banks leading into Thursday night. And then they ended up going with Membo. So that was fascinating. And I think they knew that and played that to their advantage. Certainly, I think Warren was under consideration, but they just, they hit it off with Membo. They felt like he solidifies things, and the upside is so good because he's so long and so athletic.
Absolutely.
Nobody was really getting around him last year at Mizzou. So, he sort of gives you instant credibility there. And I think they looked at it as, let's just put him on the right side. We're not messing around with this. We're not going to move him left to right or play him at guard or whatever. Like, we're just put him right tackle and let him work.
Absolutely.
And, you're seeing good teams in the league, whether you have the 10th best quarterback or the 18th or 20th, you have to have that really good line, or else you really have minimal chance of being successful in offense.
It all starts in the trenches. You don't have great trench play, you're not winning games. I look back to what the Detroit Lions did first year of Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. They took Penei Sewell. That turned out to be an incredible pick. That's kind of what sparked that resurgence for that Detroit Lions team. So again, can't complain about solidifying the offensive line. Jake comes in with $20. Appreciate you, Jake. Says, this is what Wally Pip felt like, I'd imagine. Nice get, Connor. Jeremy is awesome. Ask Jeremy about the guy in New Orleans that yelled out to him on the street one night that he's a tremendous reporter. It might have been me.
Yeah, I do remember that. And I think I saw Jake at either a Jets practice or game, and he mentioned that. I thought it was hilarious because I was at the Super Bowl in New Orleans with, my wife and I went to dinner or with some friends. We were going back to our hotel, and I heard somebody yell out about whether Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. And I didn't know who it was, or I was just getting my bearings. And I said, I don't know, as we all don't know with Aaron Rodgers as far as what his plans are typically. But it was a funny moment in the streets of New Orleans for sure, and caught my attention. So, that's one I'll remember.
Last one here, Jeremy, before we let you go. $10. Appreciate you, Ralphie, who says, what do you think is the rationale with cutting Morstead? Was it just money? San Francisco picked him up quick.
Typically, these things are about money. I don't know offhand, but a lot of times you're seeing teams get more transitional with kickers. You're just seeing a lot more churning for younger players that might have a bigger arm, or excuse me, a bigger leg. So I think that's part of it. They have a chance to, to get cheaper and younger. That's typically how these things go.
At the buzzer from Gayer McCluskey says, is there anything more you can tell us about those initial offers they made to Sauce and Garrett?
No, not yet. I just know that they certainly want to do it. And the market's going to tell a lot, because you're seeing the cornerback market now has jumped big time. So, the Jets might want to get ahead of where Derek Stingley's at $30 million. Some other corners are at that $25 million mark. So my guess is they try to get ahead of that a little bit, maybe offer something in between, which if you're Sauce, you're probably not taking less than Derek Stingley at this point, considering they're both really good players, but you probably feel like you've done a little more. And yeah, so it's going to be hefty. I mean, both contracts would have to probably hit that $30 million mark, or at least get close to it, which makes it tough. And I don't know that the Jets want to do that. And if you pick one, it's hard to leave the other guy hanging. So sometimes it's easier to just, put an initial offer, see where things are, and then say, hey, we'll shelve this and revisit it next offseason. You saw the Vikings did that with Justin Jefferson a couple years ago. They tried, waited, let him play out the year, then hit it big next offseason. Sometimes that's good for both parties. At least here, neither guy's in a contract year, so you don't have to rush it. And
you have the 5th-year option too, so you have that other year of control as well. Jeremy, really can't thank you enough for sparing some time and fitting us into your schedule here on this Friday afternoon. You got any final thoughts here before we let you go?
No, just, I think the Jets are, I don't know where I'm going to forecast them, but I like what I've seen so far. They're kind of building it like they remind me a little bit of the Lions. I mean, you see shades of that with Aaron Glenn. He knows what that blueprint looks like, and you build it inside, and you try to get some high upside guys in there who are tough, who are physical. And, I'm really interested to see what he does with the defense, because I think that's a big reason why I took the job, is he liked the pieces on defense. And so, I really expect him to put his stamp on things. We're talking about Sauce Gardner. What does Aaron Glenn do with Sauce? And does he really press him to expand his game? That's what I'm curious about. Instead of just playing one side, is he going to have him, play some man and get up there and, travel a little bit? I don't know. Sometimes that's overrated, but I think he'll experiment a little bit with Gardner. That's my point, and try to put his stamp on the team. So I'm excited about the Jets for that reason, especially on defense. Jeremy, you're the best. Have a great night. Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it, Connor. Have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler making a special appearance here on the show. Shout out